The officer was unaware of two things when he pushed my brother on the hood of his vehicle. The source of that badge was Amazon, Sen Thomas Blake, who had just gotten off a red-eye flight and wasn't in the mood for HOA drama, was the man he was detaining. When Thomas produced his Senate ID and remarked in a calm voice, "You might want to call your supervisor or your lawyer." The dashcam of the responding real police captures the moment the phony cop's face fell. I had moved into my new home in Maplorist, a gated community allegedly quiet per HOA president Cheryl Donahue, 3 weeks prior. A woman with a badge complex whose personality is best characterized as expired Chardonnay. She had immediately taken offense at my peaceful, law-abiding lifestyle, lack of yard flags, absence from HOA barbecues, and worst of all the fact that I was related to a man she said was destroying the nation. She began leaving passive-aggressive messages about community norms and the significance of preserving property values on my door as soon as she realized my brother was Senator Blake. Her eyes narrowed like a lion detecting wounded prey. Petty fines were the first. "There are water stains in your driveway, $25. Your trash cans are visible for 14 minutes after the $50 collection. The way your mail is being delivered is rude." That came to $75 somehow. I initially tried to reason with her, telling her that it is the Postal Service, not me, that decides how mail is delivered. With a potentially offensive smirk, she said that true patriots back their local HOA laws. Cheryl then started informing the neighborhood that my brother was coming to town to cause problems, and that if he showed up, she would handle it. Before a black SUV with magnetic security enforcement decals began to circle my block. I assumed she was referring to minor annoyance. Perhaps she was threatening more fines or a harshly written letter. Every time it passed my house, the car would slow down as the driver took pictures with his phone. During HOA meetings, I saw the same SUV parked at the community center. Cheryl would then come out, giving the driver a shoulder pat as if he were her personal bodyguard. Gary Hutchinson, a man in his 40s, was the driver. He had the swagger of someone who had seen too many action films and wore aviator sunglasses even at night. Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor, claims that Gary was a mall police officer who had been fired for acting too aggressively against youths. He was now Cheryl's head of security, a role she had created for him with money from the HOA. Everything got worse than I could have ever imagined the morning Thomas arrived. At 5 in the morning, he contacted me from the airport, would arrive at my house by 6:30. My phone rang at 6:15. I heard shouting coming from the background, and it was Thomas. He continued to speak in the uncannily composed tone he used before Senate hearings, saying, "Some idiot posing as law enforcement is holding me captive." There was mayhem at the neighborhood gate when I snatched up my keys and dashed outside. He was stopped at the door by Cheryl's HOA security, wearing what appeared to be a police costume, complete with a utility belt, handcuffs, and a badge that caught the morning sun in all the wrong places. Gary had exited his SUV. In order to enrage my brother, Gary had actually handcuffed him and yelled about trespassing. Thomas was more amused than worried as he stood there with his hands chained behind his back. With surprising poise, he addressed Gary, saying, "Sir, I need you to realize that what you're doing right now is a federal crime," declaring that he was acting under HOA authority, which obviously took precedence over federal law in his eyes. Gary puffed out his chest. Thank God, Mrs. Peterson was taping everything from her front yard at that point. Later on, the video would be used as proof. Regretfully for Gary, a number of real deputies were already en route since a neighbor had reported armed guys obstructing traffic to 911. The whole dynamic changed when the sheriff's deputies showed up, despite having his wrists still in handcuffs. Thomas composedly pulled his Senate credentials out of his jacket pocket. As he studied the ID, the lead deputy's eyes grew wide. The deputy remarked Senator Blake and started to uncuff him right away. "We sincerely apologize for this, sir." I still giggle at this part. Gary attempted to assert that he had federal authority to detain Thomas. His badge number was requested by the deputies. Gary answered confidently, Alpha 7. The deputies looked at each other. Slowly, as though speaking to a kid, one of them remarked, "That's not how badge numbers work. Where did you purchase this outfit?" Regarding official HOA business and neighborhood safety procedures, Gary began to stutter. Cheryl picked the exact moment to drive up to the scene in her golf cart, her face already flushed with outrage. She leaped out and began scolding the officers right away. She gestured at Thomas, saying, "This man is a known agitator who threatens our community values. My security chief was just doing out his duties." She was questioned by the head deputy about her security chief's power to hold people. She flashed a laminated card that read HOA President like it was a federal warrant after taking it out of her purse. She stated unequivocally that when it comes to neighborhood security, the HOA is superior than local law enforcement. 10 minutes later, Gary and Cheryl were both in the back of a cruise ship, accused of assault due to the handcuffs, wrongful detention, and impersonating law police. Gary had been quiet and pallid, as Cheryl persisted in her tirade about her rights as president of the HOA. She insisted that they call her attorney, who is actually her nephew, a recent law school graduate with no prior expertise in criminal defense. Residents had now gathered across the gate area to witness the show. I heard several people mutter that this was long overdue, while others were laughing out and recording. In less than 48 hours, news teams descended upon Matt Pooler. The Bodycam footage was broadcast by every station in the state. The finest part was when Gary tried to stealthily remove his false patches from his uniform when he thought no one was watching. And Cheryl argued with the deputies that the HOA is more important than local law enforcement. Cheryl was seen on camera attempting to remind the arresting officers of the HOA bylaws. She was reading from a binder she had in the golf cart. Section 3 of Article 7 makes it very evident that the HOA president has the power to keep the neighborhood safe from unwanted forces. While in handcuffs, she read in a high-pitched voice, Thomas thanked the sheriff's office for reminding the public that HOA legislation is not federal law during a brief press conference held in front of the neighborhood gate. Although he was polite and professional, I could see the faint smile he has when he knows he has won by a significant margin. He stated that no civilian has the authority to pose as law enforcement or to forcibly imprison American people, even while he supports neighborhood organizations. The media devoured it. In a matter of hours, Cheryl's mugshot photo was widely shared and the story was trending across the country. The legal repercussions were severe and quick. Gary was accused of felony police impersonation, which has a maximum punishment of 3 years in our state. Exhibit A was his phony uniform, which detectives found he had paid $300 for internet. The prosecutor discovered that he had been stopping delivery drivers and threatening to arrest them if they disobeyed his fictitious rules. Cheryl was charged with both conspiracy and impersonation. To make matters worse, her lawyer nephew attempted to claim that she sincerely thought HOA presidents had the power to enforce the law. It was shown throughout the trial that Cheryl had used more than $40,000 in HOA funds to purchase security gear, such as phony uniforms, badges, and even a light bar for Gary's SUV that he had never installed. Although invoices revealed purchases from novelty and costume shops, she had been informing people that this was for their safety. The judge didn't find it funny. He described their behavior as a risky fantasy of power that might have caused major injury. Gary received 5 years of probation and 18 months in federal prison. Cheryl was sentenced to 3 years of probation, 12 months in jail, and a $30,000 restitution order to the HOA. Cheryl's face turned from red to white to an odd purple hue when the judge read the sentence. In fact, she passed out and required court authorities to resuscitate her. Gary merely mumbled something about attempting to assist his community while hanging his head. The court retorted that assaulting U.S. senators while posing as a police officer is not part of serving the community.